Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins, Muscles by Buses Radio. My name is 𝐿𝐻𝐾𝐿.
And I'm Danny.
And this is episode 127. Okay, so we wanted to interview somebody for this episode, and I had all the names in the world, and Danny was like, just interview George. And I said, why? She said, because he's hilarious, he's well-written, he's an amazing athlete, and you should just have him on. And so here you are, man. But I know a lot about you. You and I have been friends for a very long time, but I'm sure there's a lot I don't know about you. And obviously there are going to be many people out here listening to this podcast that have no clue who you are. So do me a solid and do our audience a solid and tell us about yourself.
All right, well, thanks for that introduction, 𝐿𝐻𝐾𝐿. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's definitely an honor to be here, but a little about me. My name's George Matthews. I've been vegan for over 10 years now. I would consider myself a fitness enthusiast. I've dabbled in everything from bodybuilding. I did a little powerlifting. I now do CrossFit. Sometimes I do endurance races that go poorly, but just love fitness and working out and doing all the different things. And my full-time job is in the Coast Guard. I fly helicopters for them. Got the
Sounds like a UFO. That's okay.
Yeah.
We're good.
Let that run its course. It's done already.
All right.
But anyway, I'll start with my full-time job is, we'll start with that part, but my full-time job is in the Coast Guard. I fly helicopters for them. I've been doing that for 16 years now. And yeah, that's bringing me to Florida, where I'm about to move here soon. So that's why I'm in this random kind of spot here for this interview, but that's about it on me.
Okay, cool. And then growing up, did you just know that you were going to be in the military? When did you get into fitness, and what did that all mean to you?
So my dad was in the Coast Guard, and I always, from as far back as I can remember, wanted to be in the Coast Guard and be a helicopter pilot. It was really the only thing I ever wanted to do with my life. So there's actually stuff from when I was a little kid where I drew out, like, when I grow up, I'll be a helicopter pilot. So I've been extremely fortunate that I was able to do that. It was challenging to get there, and it was a little bit of a rocky road to get there. I stumbled quite a few times, but eventually made it, and I'm super happy that I did. I stuck with it. And then in terms of fitness, I was always an athlete. I started out, first thing I did was actually karate when I was a real little kid. And then I started playing soccer, did hockey, football for a little while. And then eventually got into some martial arts stuff again, doing jiu-jitsu. And then when I went vegan, I actually saw the book that Robert wrote that had you in it, 𝐿𝐻𝐾𝐿. You were one of my first inspirations. I was like, man, look at all the muscles this guy has as a vegan. So I started bodybuilding, and I fell in love with that, and then realized I didn't love being hungry so much. So then I started doing other things and just fitness. And for me, really, it's been, for many years now, it's been just what keeps me sane. It's kind of like my therapy for me. It's got me through some rough days, and I just love it. It makes me feel good.
Gotcha. So when you say that fitness is like your therapy and it gets you through rough days, what does that mean for you?
Well, when I really started getting serious about fitness, and I tell a story a lot, I was in Puerto Rico at the time. I had just met Natalie, and it was my first flying tour. I went through a little bit of a rough patch in my life where I was going through some family stuff. I had a couple rough search and rescue cases that were kind of traumatizing, where I saw some stuff that people should probably never see. And then my friend actually passed away in a helicopter crash, and all that kind of happened at once. And I struggled a little bit, but I found that when I would work out, whether it was, I was doing a little bit of running at the time, I was doing a lot of jiu-jitsu. And I realized during that, hour of training jiu-jitsu, when I'd just be with my friends and we'd be doing physical activity, that I'd forget about the other stuff for a minute. And afterwards I would feel better. And when I had really bad days, I remember there was actually this room in the hangar in Puerto Rico where they had like the mats on the floor, and then they had a couple punching bags, and they had one of those dummies with its arm sticking out. And every once in a while, when I would be having a rough day or I'd be struggling a little bit, I would just go in there and just go to town. I'd beat up everything that was in there until I was exhausted. And after that, I always found I just felt better. So that kind of has always been the thing. And I've realized that throughout, deployments, stressful days, I've had plenty of other cases, plenty of other things that have happened in my life. And the one constant is I've always been just maintaining that workout regimen, that workout plan. And it's always helped me to stay balanced.
Gotcha. So a lot of traumatizing stuff with Coast Guard work that affected you. I'm guessing
Right.
probably still to this day, if you can still tell the story, it's got to be there. And then other
Yeah,
stuff and family stuff. And then the training is what kept you grounded, taking it out on a dummy or weights or whatever kind of physical fitness that you were getting into while you were coping, so to speak.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think often people turn to something in those times. I think this is where we see people that sometimes end up with alcohol or whatever it may be, something to get them through. Like everyone needs something to get them through those hard times. And for me, it was fitness. And Natalie, my wife, honestly, we met right before all of this stuff happened. And she really helped get me through and supported me through all that as we went through those challenging times together.
Okay, so this was a common bond between you and Natalie where you were able to open up to her and you both used fitness as a tool to become healthier people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. How does that tie into how you stumbled across a plant-based diet and all that stuff?
That That's interesting. Those stories kind of ran parallel. So when I was in flight school, so this was coming straight out of the Coast Guard Academy, it was like 2000, graduated in 2007. So this was about 2008, 2009. I was in flight school, and again, this was very, very stressful time in my life. So really long, so this could be a whole, hour podcast on its own, but my experience in flight school was that I failed at everything. Like I was failing flights. I wasn't doing well. I started to really doubt myself and think that I wouldn't be able to make it. And I got to a point where if I had failed another flight, I was going to be kicked out of flight school. So I was drinking a little bit more than I should have. I was out partying. I was not treating my body very well during this time as kind of a poor way of coping with all of these things. And part of what made the issue worse was that I was getting sick all the time with some sinus problems. So I'd be gradually when they wouldn't let me fly because I would have all these like sinus infections. I was constantly on antibiotics and all this stuff. And so I eventually had to get a surgery in hopes to fix it. And they said that, yeah, if they couldn't fix the sinus issue, I was going to actually be medically disqualified from flight school on top of me trying to fail out at the same time. So I went through the surgery. It didn't help all that much. So I was kind of panicked at this point because, like I said, all I ever wanted to do was be a pilot. And now they're telling me that I was going to get medically disqualified from flight school. And then eventually I had this surgeon just mentioned almost in passing, like, well, have you tried removing dairy from your diet? I was like, what? No, like, why would I do that? It doesn't make any sense. Like I'm doing fine over here, And he said, hey, give it a shot. And I did. I removed dairy, and then almost immediately I felt better. Like I noticed a huge improvement. People always ask, like, "Oh, did you notice that you felt better when you went vegan?" But really, just like taking out dairy was night and day for me. I had like the headaches went away, all the sinus stuff went away. Got off all the antibiotics, everything else, and I just felt great. So at that point in my life, I realized, like, wait a minute, my food choices kind of impact my health a little bit, and that's what got me curious. So I quickly was like, let me just cut out red meat. I think that might be bad for whatever reason. I didn't do a whole lot of research. Like this wasn't something that I spent a lot of time thinking about. I was just like, hey, I felt better without dairy. Why don't we try getting rid of red meat? And I did, and I felt a little bit better then. And then that's kind of how I went through flight school. I ate chicken and fish. And then when I got to Puerto Rico, I ate some chicken off the side of the road at one of those where they cook the street meats. Probably not a great idea, but anyway, I got really sick off chicken. Like I thought I wasn't going to make it through this. I was so sick. So then I was like, well, that was it for chicken. Like that ended the chicken for me. So then at this point, I was only eating fish, and really only like, I don't know, maybe once a month. I wasn't big on it, so I would eat it here and there. And then that's about the time where I met Natalie. So when I met my wife, she only had dairy and I only had fish, and we kind of made that work. And eventually I learned about more of, as I was researching the health stuff, I learned more about the ethical and the environmental impacts of veganism. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to support any of this stuff. And so then I went fully vegan at that time, about, I don't know, it was over 10 years ago now, and really haven't looked back. I mean, it just seems so normal now in the way for me that I felt the best. I feel good about my choices and how they impact the environment. I really like animals. I mean, part of the reason why I joined the Coast Guard, well, the main reason I joined the Coast Guard is I wanted to help people and save people and keep people alive. And so it only made sense that I did that with my food choice as well for the animals that I also care about. So that's how I kind of ended up with that.
Do you wind up having conversations like that at work with coworkers or with people that you're rescuing? Or well, I'm just curious. I'm wondering what it's like to be like a day in the life of you.
It's so my coworkers ask a lot. It's a common question. As you can imagine, in the military, it's a certain type of person, and oftentimes they don't understand. I immediately, almost always, get the question, "Did your wife make you go vegan?" Which really drives me nuts because it implies a lot of things that, like, it's a feminine thing to go vegan. So obviously, my wife made me do it, and which doesn't really make sense to me. And then they'll ask about, like, I don't know, then, oh, so you can't have gluten, which is my next favorite question that we won't get into that. But anyway, it's, there's just not a whole lot of understanding. And that's part of the reason why I got into fitness too, because when I first started, it'd be like, oh, you're going to lose all your muscle. You're just going to be scrawny. You're going to be weak. You're going to do all this. And I thought the best way to answer the question was to just not be scrawny and weak. Like, then they wouldn't be able to say that. And so that's kind of how I stumbled into bodybuilding. And now I found that the conversations come up, but I think living by example and just showing, like, trying to be healthy and being approachable and not being combative about it, I find that the conversations are a lot easier now, where people are just genuinely curious of, like, how do you eat? Like, how do you do this? Like, I see you're in pretty good shape. How are you able to do that on a vegan diet? And so I'll educate them. And generally, like, when I first was vegan, I feel like it was a lot harder to have these conversations. People didn't understand it. And it was more just like I was being taunted. And now it's more people are genuinely curious, and it seems to be more mainstream at this point. So it's easier to have those conversations. And yeah, I mean, it's tricky because, like, I'd be on deployment, I'd do one of my last units, I'd be 60 days on a boat and having to have every meal with these people. And, I'd show up on the boat and they didn't have a whole lot of vegan options. So I'd be like carrying duffel bags full of food, and then I'd be making my own food. So every time I would sit down, people would be like, well, what are you eating? Why don't you eat the food that's on the boat? What does this mean? What? And so I'd have to literally for 60 days explain every meal over and over again, which, it could be exhausting at times, but I think there's a lot of people that have changed the way that they ate or changed their lifestyle a little bit because of me. And so I think it's worth it. But yeah, now it's great. I have my unit now. It's a small, it's like a forward operating base, and there's only about 6 pilots. And one of the other pilots is also vegan. So it's pretty good. We got a pretty good odds now. So we can, I've got strength in numbers with, 2 out of 6 pilots is pretty good.
You didn't know any of that. That's pretty cool. You get to work with another pilot on that's vegan.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine the ongoing conversation, how exhausting that could be. And the thought of, like, well, the hope, if this makes a difference with one person, and then sometimes it probably just feels like being hazed, or you get tired of it. But kudos to you for standing your ground and just dealing with the stupidity. On a lighter note, what do you give me an example of, like, the silliest response someone has ever given to you when they've questioned how you eat and made a comment about it or whatever, and in your response, because you're the type of guy that would come up with something hilarious. At least that's the you that I know.
I've had a lot. The one, it's funny because the other vegan pilot, we laugh about this all the time because when we were both together, we were also stationed in Houston together, her and I, and we had a rescue swimmer come up to us and almost like berating us about like chromium. They're like, what are you going to do about chromium? I'm like, I get a lot of other things, but chromium, I don't know. Like, I honestly haven't thought about it. Like, I hope I might not live through the day. Like, I'm not sure, but like, they were very, very concerned with chromium. I'm like, I think it'll be all right. To this day, I don't know about it, but we still laugh about like, oh, how's your chromium doing? You know, but so yeah, I've had that one. Sometimes I don't know. I usually just laugh it off, like, because people say all kinds of ridiculous stuff. But that was a big one. The iron, of course, I get the soy, estrogen, man boobs conversation a lot, and I'm like, I usually just tell them I wish that I could grow that easy. You know, I've been working my chest for years. It hasn't been. Can't even tell. So if I could, I'd be just eating soy by the dump truck full if that would help me build my chest. But yeah, I don't know. Most of the time people are pretty good now these days.
Gotcha. Yeah, the conversations don't end. Like, eventually you just become desensitized, or you just wind up saying something off the cuff because you can't control people and they're going to come at you with whatever. And you've always been the type of person where I'm like, if I could be a fly on the wall for half your conversations based on how I see you respond to people, oh my gosh, I think I would have enough comedy in my life to last for a lifetime.
Hey listeners, we hope you've been enjoying this episode, and we appreciate your love of all things vegan fitness. For those of you who want even more support on your vegan fitness journey, check out our Muscles by Brussels community and become a member. By joining the team, you are one of our exclusive VIPs. As a member, you'll find over 200 macro-friendly, high-protein recipes that can meet any of your meal planning needs. You'll also receive training programs that update monthly. This training has progressive overload built into it, so you can be sure if you're following the program, you are making progress. All of this and more is located inside our VeganProteins members-only app. As a Muscles by Brussels member, you'll unlock bonus courses, challenges, and more every month. You'll also be invited to our live Zoom video calls, which happen 2 times a month, and are absolute gold to those who show up. And if you can't make the calls, don't worry, you have the opportunity to email us whenever you want. You'll receive a video response to all of your questions from one of the coaches here at VeganProteins every time you message us. Members also receive 40% off many of our other services. And of course, our private community of like-minded individuals is like no other. Best of all, you can try this membership out for a full month at no cost to you with this special offer for our listeners only, because we appreciate and want to fully support you. Use the link in our show notes to sign up for your free trial today. We hope to see you on our next live coaching call.
All right, we're back.
Nice. All right, cool. Where's my head at? So you transitioned from sports in your youth and you overcame, got healthier as an adult, got into bodybuilding, and I know recently you transitioned into CrossFit. Can you talk a little more about like what that was like, moving from one sport to the other and continuing to, because from what I see with you, George, everything you do, you wind up looking to be the absolute best at. And I'm curious to know what you tap into to get there.
That's a great question. So sports in high school was interesting for me. I played soccer because I loved it. And then same with hockey, all that stuff. And the team sports I really loved. And I thought, hey, this is going to help get me in college. This is going to do all these things. And I was like, just extremely motivated. I loved working hard. That was something that my family and my dad and my mom were really big on, was like, hey, you sign up for the team, you're going to finish the season and don't waste anyone's time by going out there and like giving half effort. Like you go all out. And they supported me in that because I loved it. Like I remember my dad one time, I lived in Virginia at the time, and I'll never forget, we went out. I was like, hey, I'm working on this thing with soccer. Like, I don't remember what it was. If it was like trying to make this certain type of shot or doing whatever. And he was like, okay, well, let's go to the soccer field. And I remember being there in the lights at the high school field, and it started like downpouring rain. And we were out there just in the rain at night, like doing this until we got it right. And my dad was just supporting it. And so I had that support growing up, which was huge. You know, I was super lucky to have had that. And then that kind of carried through the years. And so, you know, at the academy, I played ice hockey, and then I had a little bit of a.
That's all right. We got, see, usually I'll have a little soundboard and I'll pop in some bells and whistles when we do a podcast, but the community room over there where you just relocated in Florida has taken care of this for us. We have the sound effects and everything. So I'm loving this. I think all this needs to stay. Every single last bit of it needs to be right here on this podcast. I'm cool with it. Yeah.
So yeah, when I was at the Coast Guard Academy, I played ice hockey. They have like a club team there. I did that for a few years, and then I had a couple of injuries and I wasn't able to play. Apparently getting head injuries in flying aircraft don't go together all that well, so they told me I couldn't play anymore if I wanted to be a pilot. So I retired from ice hockey at that point. And then once I went to flight school and stuff, I was just kind of general levels of fitness. And I eventually found jiu-jitsu, like I said, with that like mental health thing. And transition from that, it was actually kind of a funny thing because I was like, well, I wanted to compete. Like I really, like you're saying, I wanted to go all in and I wanted to work hard. So I love jiu-jitsu. I competed at it a couple times when I was in Puerto Rico. And then when I got to Florida, I was going to compete again. And then I broke my finger. It was nasty. Like it was my ring finger. It was like pointed about 90 degrees from where it was supposed to be. And of course it was my ring finger. And this was like about 2 months before we were supposed to get married. So that was interesting. But anyway, I broke that. And then I had to have, the break was so bad that I had to have emergency surgery like a couple days later to put like a bunch of pins in it. I had a cast all the way up to like my elbow. And so I couldn't fly for about 3 months because I had the cast on, and they were worried. They were like, if I couldn't get like full motion in my hand and be able to use that the way it's, you know, hand's supposed to work, I wouldn't be able to fly helicopters anymore. So I was like, well, all right, like maybe I should not do contact sports. Like it wasn't great showing up at work with like cuts on my eyes and black eyes and broken fingers. So I retired from that. And then for a little while, I wasn't sure what to do. And I remember actually, it's kind of funny now, listening to different podcasts and doing stuff while I'd be walking around the neighborhood with, I had a weight vest and I had a cast in this arm. And then I would put like one of those ankle weights on this arm so that my arms weighed the same. And I would just walk for hours, like around the neighborhood so I can try and like stay in shape while I had my broken finger. And then I had like a system of bands and stuff that I could use to figure out working out and all this kind of stuff. But anyway,
did it help?
It helped. Like I was great. There was one day though, and we're going to go on a tangent here, but I had this system where I was like, the cast was up to here, right? And I couldn't use my hand. So I went online and I bought these little cuffs that had like the D-ring, like the ones that like Natalie uses for the booty kickbacks and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I would connect them right here. And then I had these big like clips on them. And so what I would do is at home, I would like attach those to bands, and I figured out how I could do chest press and I could do like shoulder stuff and like all this stuff so I could, you know, stay pumped up. And eventually I started feeling myself. I'm like, I'm going to go to a commercial gym, like a regular gym. And I was all excited to be back in the gym. And I went to one of the seated row machines where they have like, you know, the weight stack. And I attached the pull cable. It had like 2 cables, and I attached one to each arm. And I was like, this is great. I can do a row, you know? So I'm like doing the row. Everything's great. And then I go to get out of the machine and it like pulls me into the machine. So I'm stuck like in the machine, like my face is in like the cable stack and I've got like both arms stuck on the machine. And I'm like trying to get out of, like, I'm stuck there and I'm like trying to wedge my foot up so I can like push myself out and like get out of this situation. There's like people, everyone's looking at me and I'm like, you know, telling them to get away. I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'll get out of this. But eventually, yeah, I worked myself out, and I think I took a couple of days off from the commercials. I don't think I went back until I got my cast off, but so yeah, I was doing that. And then anyway, that's why I stopped doing jiu-jitsu. and then found during that time the whole vegan thing. And I was like, I think I even reached out to you about it at one point. You wrote me back and were like kind of encouraging about going vegan, doing bodybuilding. I can't remember what questions I had. And then I was like, well, I'll do bodybuilding. So I went all in on that. My goal was I wanted to be a part of Plant Build. I thought it was the coolest thing. I remember showing my wife and like, oh, hey, like this Plant Build thing, like this is super cool. And so that was my goal. And I started working out. I went on stage for the first time I think I was like 130 pounds. I was lean. I was real lean, had that dialed in, but I just hadn't really built up enough muscle at that point. And then I did a couple shows, and then I did competed alongside you guys when you did Plant Build in Austin. And when Natalie was on Plant Build, my wife, and then did that. And then after that, I was kind of like in this phase where I'm like, bodybuilding was fun, but it wasn't really like my thing, I guess. Like I didn't like being hungry, and I was more into like, I loved the martial arts style training where it was just like, you get really sweaty and tired and like go all out and you can eat as much as you want and do that kind of thing. So I kind of was figuring out my life for a little while, and I was doing like a hybrid training where I was doing like some bodybuilding. I was like, well, maybe I'll compete in powerlifting. So I did that. And then when I started doing CrossFit, I really fell in love with it because it was a mix of everything. Like I could do the stuff I learned from martial arts, the stuff I learned from bodybuilding, all the different things, and just like all in one. And I think, when you describe me as like being all in on everything, I think that's kind of how CrossFit is. It's like the perfect sport for people. Like I haven't really been great at any one thing, but when you take CrossFit, it's like you're best at being average at a bunch of different things. And so it kind of worked for me. And it's really about how hard you can work and how hard you can work out. And I just love that aspect of it. And yeah, the mental thing is so huge for that. I think that being able to push yourself, and it's similar to bodybuilding. I mean, you know how it is. There's these days, I know you have them, we all have them, where you don't want to work out, or you don't think you can make it through the workout, or you don't know how you're going to finish that next rep, that next set, that next whatever it is. And that skill of being able to push yourself through that and get through that workout, I think is one of the most important skills you can have. And it translates into life. Like I still go back to, I was just talking to Natalie about this the other day. Like, if I'm doing a 20 or 30-minute workout or one of these harder, even hour-long workout, I go back to the fact that, I did this other workout that was longer. I know I can get through this. And then even in life, like when you have those tough days, you're like, well, I can get through this. Like I know how to do this because you've built that skill of persisting through adversity, which I think is why working out is so important for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you who are listening that don't already know, George is our fearless leader / team captain for the CrossFit, for the Vegan Strong Plant Build team. And you got a whole squad coming through too in October at Mr. America, and y'all are going to be competing together. Any thoughts about what your team is looking to accomplish and how that event is going to go? I don't know much about I know you said there were couples, right? That's about as much as I know. That's the extent. I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to CrossFit.
Yes, but what we know so far, so I'm, number one, just so excited. Like I said, it was always my dream to be a part of Plant Build. And it's just funny that I ended up being a CrossFit athlete in Plant Build because I didn't expect that to happen. I just kind of started doing CrossFit. And, when you reached out after the bodybuilding, I was like, well, let's see if I can get some CrossFit going. And we've worked to get a team, and it's been amazing. Some of the veterans, because you used to do CrossFit before my time, and so I've got some of the veterans on the team, and like Cody and Sally and all them, and it's just incredible to first and foremost to work out with athletes that are vegan, that believe in the same things that you do, that understand that for us it's not just about winning and getting trophies, that it's more the behind the scenes of how we conduct ourselves and have the conversations and just change a couple of people's minds while we're out competing. That's what it's really about. And in terms of results, I think we have some very, very strong athletes. We've got a couple new athletes that I'm super excited to meet and work out with. And the way the format is this year is really fun. So last year it was all individuals, and then they had masters individuals as well. But this year it'll all be teams. So we're going to have teams of 2. So it's male, male, female, or female. And so we've got right now 2 male teams, 2 female teams. And I'm super excited about the talent we have. And more than that, I'm very proud of the people on the team because they're just such incredible people. Like I had the time of my life last year with them, just hanging out with them, getting to know these people and being around like-minded people that I think really are making a difference and that are committed to making a difference and changing people's minds about a plant-based lifestyle.
Nice. Yeah, I'm pretty psyched. We're going to break a record this year and compete in 6 different sports for the very first time. And I'm looking forward to seeing what your team does when they roll out there. And you'll have more room because last year there was not enough space, I believe. So people were like crashing into each other and whatnot. But this year, that should hopefully not be the case. Not that either of us have seen what the field is going to look like. But so, and for you, do you see yourself doing CrossFit long term? Do you see yourself doing other sports competitively? Just curious.
I see myself doing CrossFit long term. I love CrossFit just because it's so varied. And like what the problem I've had with other sports, I think, is that I get bored doing the same thing every day, and I like to change it up. And CrossFit encompasses so many different things. I mean, you have Olympic weightlifting, you do the big 3 from powerlifting, you do endurance stuff, you do like monostructural machine stuff, so like rowing, biking, running, all that kind of thing. And then you do Olympic movements, which are fun challenge, muscle ups, handstand push-ups, handstand walking, all the different like gymnastic movements. So there's really like no shortage of things. And then what I also love about CrossFit, I think, is it sets you up for many other different sports. Like, I on a whim ran a marathon, did a triathlon, I've done half marathons, Spartan races, all these kind of things, which almost all are part of CrossFit because they say it's the unknown and unknowable, I guess. So it could really be anything that tests your fitness. And that's what I really love about it, is just this general preparedness for life in general. And being someone in the military, I think part of me always thinks that there's a chance that doing what I do, flying helicopters for a living out in the middle of the ocean, at night in storms, that there's a chance that I could end up in the water and my life would depend on me being fit and to be able to stay afloat or to stay in the water and swim for a long period of time. So I think that it prepares you for that. And that's part of what drives me as well, is just knowing that somebody might depend on me in my level of fitness someday. And so I love that aspect of it. I think it's good too for longevity in terms of just functional movements. I laugh a little bit because what sort of got me into CrossFit was I'd been bodybuilding. And when I was bodybuilding, I was like, hey, I'm bulking up. So like cardio, like I wasn't even, I tried to avoid walking upstairs or doing anything. It was either I was lifting or I was like sitting on the couch, just making sure the gains were being processed. You know what I mean? And then, when you diet down, you do a little bit of like steady state cardio or whatever. And so there was at least like some cardio at some point in the year. And then I remember when I was kind of dabbling in powerlifting, I was like training as a powerlifter, and I was thinking about doing a powerlifting meet. And this was towards the end of my time in Houston. And for my friend I talked about that passed away earlier, there's like this, they call it the Coast Guard Aviation Workout to Remember. And we do it every year to kind of honor everyone that's passed away in Coast Guard Aviation. In the workout, it starts with a 400-meter run. It's like a quarter-mile run. I remember doing this particular year when I'd only been doing powerlifting. And I remember doing the first 400-meter run, and I thought I was going to go into cardiac arrest. Like I didn't think I was going to survive the 400-meter run. And that workout performance, it took me it felt like the better part of a day to complete this workout that's supposed to be, less than an hour. And I was like, okay, I need to start like doing something. Like I didn't feel like an athlete anymore. And so that was where I kind of fell in love with CrossFit, because you do have that just general athleticism. Like I still get to do the stuff. And now I'm sort of hybrid too, where I'll do CrossFit about 5 days a week. And then on my 2 rest days, I'll usually go to the gym with Natalie and do some bro stuff and get a pump and do some chest flies and flex in the mirror or whatever. So I still have that part of me that, loves going and just doing bro workouts. And so, yeah, I see it for sure long term and something that I'll continue doing for a while.
All right, couple things you said you wanted to mention. Eating salad on a plane. I know that's my thing. Have you grabbed yourself a nice head of romaine and eaten on a plane yet? You really got to do it, George. It's where it's at.
I haven't. And what 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐞 was referring to is, I think, what was it, the LA Fit Expo that you came to? I can't remember. But anyway.
Yeah.
𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐞 came down to the LA Fit Expo, and was prepping at the time. And I remember asking Danny, one of my favorite people in the world, like how the trip was, how the flight over was. I expected oh yeah, it was great. Like it was fine, easy. But really, she just wanted to tell me about how 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐞 on the flight, some point in the middle of the flight, just takes out a snack, which was just like a whole thing of lettuce, and just started eating lettuce like on the plane, just as loud as possible. Like you could hear it over the engines from the way Danny describes it. And so just really playing into the stereotype of vegans just eating handfuls of lettuce out in public on a plane. But no, that's not something that I normally do. However, if it wasn't for Natalie making all of my food, who knows what I would be into. I mean, you've seen when she leaves for a week and I can barely survive having to cook for myself. So yeah, I'm pretty spoiled.
Okay, so you don't do as much of the cooking. So how do you make it appealing? Because in my opinion, eating a head of lettuce on a plane, that's going to make veganism sexy. Like that's going to make people want to go vegan.
Yeah.
But what is it for you? Like what is your favorite meal, or how do you roll? Give me like your favorite, like perfect post-workout meal. What do you throw down?
I've got to, so I got to give a disclaimer that people always ask me, one of the questions, like if they're curious about vegan, like, oh, what do you eat for protein? How do you cook tofu? And they ask me, and I'm like, I don't have the slightest clue. I don't cook I haven't cooked a meal in so long. So, I'm fortunate enough, Natalie, who is a chef, one of the best cooks ever, makes all my food. She doesn't let me make food because I destroy the kitchen, and she just like feels bad for me when I try to make my own food. So she makes everything. She does all my macros. She does all of it. And so I'm super fortunate. One of the many reasons why I'm lucky that I'm married to her, but she takes care of me, and the meals she makes are all incredible. But really, I love pizza is one of my favorites, any type of vegan pizza, which is one of the few things that I can make in a pinch. I can throw a vegan pizza together, but that's probably my favorite. Donuts, I love, which is funny because I didn't care at all about donuts until I went vegan. And then when I went vegan, it was like this constant quest of trying to find the best donuts I could find. That's a big one. She makes a couple like Puerto Rican recipes too that are just like phenomenal. She just makes like the Puerto Rican rice that she makes, the rice condules, rice and beans. The pasteles are really good. She's got a whole bunch of Puerto Rican stuff that's phenomenal that she's made vegan. So yeah, I'm spoiled, but yeah, don't come for me asking for recipes because I couldn't tell you the first thing about how to make anything.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that we leave a link below in the show notes for Natalie's cookbook. That way the listeners, like whoever's here watching us, if you're still here, you could check out that recipe book and make something on your own. Yeah, of course. What about you? How do people find you if anyone wants to be in touch?
So I am on Instagram at 𝐸𝐻_Matthews. It's my full name. Richie with a T. And sometimes I go on Facebook. I don't know. I'm not huge in social media. I am though. Did you see? I finally have committed. I've told the people on the internet that I'm trying to write a book now. So I've got a website, 𝐸𝐻_Matthews.com. Currently, it has some stock photos of succulents. That was what was on the stock website. So don't go there right now. There's probably nothing there, but there is a website that someday is going to exist. I don't know, decided I'm going to try and write a book. I don't know what that's going to look like or where it's going to end up, but I like to write. I like telling stories. So here we are.
Well, you write a lot of the stuff for the Vegan Strong Plant Build team behind the scenes, which many people may not know. And Danny and I both know how much you enjoy writing. Do you have any idea at all what it is that you want, what kind of stories you want to tell, or what, nothing? You're just going to take the pen and start going and see where it goes?
I think I do. So some of the themes of it is just, I think that what makes my story relatable and no different than a lot of people is the fact that to get to where I am now, which is really living the way I wanted to live my whole life. Like I'm doing exactly what I dreamed of doing and doing all that. That I failed so many times getting here. Like I have failed every way you can possibly fail. Like I almost, like I got rejected trying to go to the Coast Guard Academy. I got to the Coast Guard Academy. I immediately almost failed out my first semester. And then as soon as my grades were slightly above failing, I tried to get kicked out every other way I could by getting into trouble. And then after that, you know, I finally made it to flight school, where I also tried to get to fail out of that. And so I think that it's just my story is relatable in that I've just fallen short so many times. And the only reason I've had any success, if you want to call it that, is just because despite all those failures, I just kind of wouldn't give up and I just kept going. And I think there's power in that. And I think that that would resonate with people. And I just think it'd be fun to share that message, share that lesson.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to hear the mental toughness. It's really cool to hear about your struggles because all I see are the successes and I'm like, how are you so successful? And it's also nice to know that you've gone through a lot of failing to overcome and get where you are today. You're even more, I admire you that much more now. And I'm glad that we got a chance to have you on the podcast. This has been really cool.
Yeah, no, thank you. Like I said, it's a dream come true. I mean, you were my first inspiration of wanting to be a bodybuilder. It was like, I can remember clear as day, like sitting on my back deck, reading Robert's book and seeing a picture of you. And that was like the moment where I was like, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. I'm going to prove everyone wrong that thinks I'm going to be scrawny. I'm going to look like 𝐬𝐿 in a couple minutes here. And and here we are. So yeah, it's huge to see it come full circle.
Well, I'm looking forward to chilling with you at Plant Build, doing our thing and rolling out and competing. Thank you again for sharing your story and giving our audience a chance to get to know you a little better. I'll make sure to leave the Succulent website, soon to be a website with your book on it, and a link to Natalie's cookbook, as well as a link to find you on Instagram. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. Please stay in touch with us on socials at Muscles by Brussels, at Vegan Proteins, also at I'm Just Athena. Keep the conversation going with our private community by becoming a Muscles by Brussels member, or just hit the contact button on veganproteins.com. You will get a human response from one of us every single time. I promise you. Once again, my name is 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐿.
And I'm Danny.
We'll talk to you soon.